All right, this is Jacob Peterson, as indicated by my site here. I'm going to be giving an overview of the Lighthouse auditing tool that's available in Chrome Developer Tools. So to start out, let me just open that up. If you open up your Chrome Developer Tools here, if you go over to the Audit tab here, this is where you have the Lighthouse Auditor. And as it says, it helps you identify and fix common problems that affect your site's performance, accessibility, and user experience. So what this is going to do is just look through your site and check for a bunch of common problems and then give suggestions on how to fix those. So if we say perform an audit, it actually has these 4 different sections. Does it meet the standards of a progressive web app? We talked a little bit about what it means to be a progressive web app at the beginning of this class. And so this is going to actually give some suggestions for how to make your web page perform more as if it were an application, and some tips for how to improve your performance that way. Next section is performance. How long does this app take to show content and become usable? So this is going to be a lot of your speed and your network stuff, your loading. It'll help you sort through those things. Next is best practices. So it's going to just be things like making sure all the libraries that you use are free of bugs and things like that. I think that's an error that I got on that one time. And then the last section is accessibility. Is the page usable by people with disabilities or impairments? So I'm going to start out just by running an audit. Just click run for all these sections. This will take a little bit of time. It's going to try a bunch of stuff. It takes a while, so I'm actually going to pause the video while it runs, and then I'll pick back up when it's finished. Okay, so it looks like that audit finished up running, and you can see my scores right here in those 4 sections. As you can see, I performed all right in some areas, not so well in others. You don't necessarily need to strive for 100% as far as I'm concerned on these. This is more a starting point if you want to optimize something. For example, if you notice that your performance is a little bit slow, to get some suggestions for where to start on this optimization. I actually, funny enough, I ran a Lighthouse audit on the Google developers page for the Lighthouse audit, like tutorial, and their audit performed even worse than this one. So it's not something where you have to have 100 on all of these, but these are great places to start to improve your site. So let's just kind of digest these results here. What I'll do is I'll go through each of these sections one at a time, and I'll use some of the resources that they have available to see if I can figure out what the error that I'm getting is, or the warning is, and then how I can fix it. And I'll go through and try to fix at least one thing in each of these sections. And then what I'll do is when I'm finished, I will go ahead and make all these changes. I'll upload all this code again to my server and run it again and see if we made any improvements. That is one thing I forgot to mention. This does need to run on an HTTP or HTTPS page. So if you're just running this from your file or from your local host, you're not going to be able to run the Lighthouse audit. Just one thing to be aware of. Okay, so let's start with this progressive web app section. I will be honest, I didn't know a lot of what these things were when I first saw these errors, but luckily Chrome has got a lot of helpful instructions. So you'll see a couple of these errors have to do with no manifest being fetched. I didn't know what no manifest was the first time I ran this, so I just opened up one of these. The little learn more here links to some documentations for Google developers. Let's just go there. Almost all of these will have some documentation. So it looks like this one is for adding a theme color, which I read up a little bit about. It sounds like you can actually have the browser load just a portion of your page, just really the theme color while it's loading the rest of the page to just give a better experience. And it's all part of something called manifest. But I want to learn more about that manifest itself, so I'm going to check out this documentation here. Manifest exists. And we won't read through this all right now, but this is kind of where I came to find out what a web manifest even is. And after I learned what one is, I went out and I made one. I actually found a nifty bit of code here someone put out on GitHub that will make a manifest for you. So I just put in this information about my site, and I clicked go, and it created this manifest for me. So I actually took this manifest.json code here, and I copied that, and I copied all of these meta tags, and I went over and put those in my code. Let me update that so we can see that. Okay, here we go. I have gone out and I've put these meta tags into my code. It recommends that you use these meta tags. Also, I've added this manifest.json here, just copied the code over from that. So you can learn a lot more about the manifest, but it's just something that I learned about here from using this audit and I stuck in, so we'll see if that helps me out later on. Let's see what the next section is and see if we can fix something in that area. So this was performance. I got a 61 score on performance. Looks like it's measuring how long it's taking to get some meaningful content on the page. That was a little bit slow. Let's go to these opportunities to see what I could make faster. Looks like I have some render blocking style sheets. So if I expand this, it'll show me some style sheets that I can maybe load up later or something so that it's not blocking the rendering of my page. What I want to focus on here is these improperly sized images. You see that I can save almost 2 seconds here by properly sizing my images. And it shows you what images are too large. It looks to me like these are images that I'm storing at a larger size, but I'm never displaying them at their full size. So I'm wasting some network time getting all of those large images over there. So again, I just went over to this learn more about appropriately sized images. I think this is one I clicked on. And actually found a whole lot of recommendations by following the different links here. This one was very helpful. It was about in your HTML, your markup language, some code you can use to make sure that you're not loading images that are too large. And in your CSS. This is the one that I mostly use, this images and markup. So I read through this and again found just a lot of different ways that I could fix my images. The first thing that it recommended was just to resize them if I'm never going to display them at that large size to make them smaller. So I took them from, most of them were about 1,000 pixels wide. I took them down to smaller sizes based on how large I'm using them. I actually found, if we actually go look at those images, the largest I ever displayed is about 750 pixels, and then if this is on mobile, I display it at about 300 pixels. So I actually made 2 sizes of images based on some recommendations that I read here, and I can show either one, again, based on some things that I learned here about how to display different images. The next thing I did was I followed their recommendation that I read in this documentation to actually convert these to WebP images, which is a mostly lossless compression format. It's not fully supported, but it's pretty well supported. And I just, for that resizing and that conversion to WebP, I just found these 2 online tools that worked pretty well. I'm sure that there's command line tools that you can use for this as well, but these online tools are what I used. So I got those 2 different sizes of images. I can show you in my images folder that for each image that it recommended, I have 2 WebP images that are really a ton smaller. You can see that this one's just 23 kilobytes. That's much smaller than the original one was. Looks like it was 111 kilobytes originally. So I followed that recommendation, and then in my index.html, I followed another recommendation that I read about for using this picture element, which I guess is something that's gaining traction in browsers, but essentially you can have different sources for your image based on the screen size here. So that's what I did. I'm using a smaller image here on smaller screens, a larger one on larger screens, then with this plain old image tag for a fallback for browsers that are not supported. So hopefully that'll help me to load just the size of image that I really need. So that's what I did to fix the image size as far as my performance fix. Let's move on to the next section. All right, so the next section here after performance was accessibility. We can see I'm doing pretty well here, but I actually fixed almost all of these things in accessibility. I was able to stick alt tags on my elements that did, or my images that didn't have them. That was pretty easy. I was able to improve my color contrast. I'll just show you really quick how I did that. So it'll show you that the failing elements, the ones that are too hard to read. We can go look at that. That's this text right here. So I went and found out what that text was and what the background it was on, which is just a white, an FFF code in hex. And I just searched for an accessibility color checker. Oops. This is a tool I just found online where I was able to put in my color here and the background color, and I was able to adjust the lightness of the text until it was dark enough that it was readable. So I went ahead and I took that recommendation and I made that muted text a little lighter to improve the color contrast. Okay, last section I'm just going to finish up here. These are just best practices. A couple of things I could fix here. I could use HTTPS. I'd have to set that up. One really easy thing that I saw that I could fix was just I found that I'm including a JavaScript library with a known security vulnerability. I looked and somehow I'm using a super old version of jQuery, so that's super easy. I just went out and pointed my jQuery to the latest 3.3.1 stable version that hopefully should have that vulnerability fixed. So I'm glad that I saw that recommendation. I was able to upgrade to a newer version of jQuery. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload all these changes to my server and run the audit again. Like you can see, there's a lot that you can digest here about what's going well, what's not going well. But I just wanted to show you how to follow their documentation to fix at least a couple of things in each category. All right, so I uploaded those changes. I got a fresh copy of Jacob Peterson or jacobnpeterson.com, and I ran the audit again. So let's compare these figures with the ones on the next tab over, which is my fresh copy. And as you can see, we improved in all these areas. So the stuff we did really helped us out. We made a really big, nice jump here in performance. I think using the smaller images really helped. I learned from reading some of the documentation linked here that images are what takes most of the time to load on your page, which you can imagine because they're obviously the largest files there. So this was it took some time. It was a little difficult reading through and learning about the web manifest, some of the different things you could do with images. But really, there's some wonderful tools here as far as links to documentation and even tutorials. I wanted to show you this. I was reading about getting to your first meaningful paint faster, and I wanted to find out how to do that. So I linked to this documentation here, and I found out about optimizing the critical rendering path. I didn't know a lot about that, so I read up on that documentation, and I found out that at the end of this documentation, they actually have a free course on Udacity. So they actually quite a few of these have, a free course associated with them. So I won't sign in here, but it has probably a 6-hour course just about optimizing the critical path, just all for free with a student account through these Google Developer Resources. So really some helpful information for anyone to go through and be able to optimize their site for performance, accessibility, and best practices, and to try to make it a really great progressive web app. So check it out. Thanks for watching.